Well, the mindset that's been driving the city and that's driven the politicians has been pumping. Every drop of water that falls here, we have to pump out. That's stupid.
That is the unadulterated opinion of architect David Wagner about New Orleans' flooding situation and the big problems we face here. He was one of a number of experts we talked to last night in our special called Down the Drain, focusing on the city's terrible problems with the Sewage and Water Board and the city itself. Joining us now with his perspective is engineer HJ Bosworth, Jr., an engineer and member of levees.org. And you've been on the show a number of times on the phone. Good to have you here in the studio. We appreciate that.
Good morning.
First of all, it was very eye-opening to see the dysfunction within the Sewage and Water Board and the city itself for the problems we've been seeing over the past several months.
It was. What you did, what WWL did by investigating this was extraordinarily useful. I doubt that the city's investigation will be as good because, after all, the city's going to deal with a contractor that they're familiar with, and the hard questions may or may not get asked. Or if they do get asked, they may not be published into whatever report they produce. Levees.org was very on top of the Corps of Engineers effectively investigating themselves after
because
the
that's
flood.
what the problem was in Katrina.
Yes, the Corps of Engineers decided, what programs the engineers would use to, design the sheet pile walls, the levees, the interaction in between the two, and they made a mistake way back in the 80s that led to short sheet piles and to canals that all failed and flooded our city.
And now the work they've done has vastly improved our protection from hurricanes. Now, when we talk about rain events like we had in July and August, these are things that are part of a systemic problem. And we probably had the biggest wake-up call we've ever had in this city with Hurricane Katrina. And in the beginning, like a lot of the drainage system was cleaned out and maintained. Then that laid fallow for almost or more than a decade.
It was. The FEMA came in here immediately after the flood, cleaned out our catch basins and cleaned out some drain lines here and there, and handed the ball over to the Sewage and Water Board, who horribly dropped the ball. And,
well, that in the city, because the Department of Public Works is responsible for the catch basins.
Right, excuse me. Sewage and Water Board and the Department of Public Works are all responsible for what's underneath our streets and how we get water from our streets to the canals and then hopefully pump them out.
Are you at all optimistic that things are going to change to the point where, because in the report last night, I think it was Mr. Wagner who said, we're on a ticking time bomb. We don't have decades, we have years.
I agree with that to a point. We've got to manage our water better. We've got to manage our systems better. There is some green space in New Orleans that does provide for some storage capacity. You've got City Park that is actually designed and elevated to a point where it provides storage capacity. You have Bayou St. John, you have the canals. People say, oh, we can, pump an inch in the first hour. Not really. You can pump a half an inch in the first hour. The system itself, if it's empty, can handle the other half an inch.
Yeah. Now, if we'd have seen the same kind of indignation and let's do something about it 8 years ago with the city and the Sewage and Water Board, we might not be in this situation today.
Unfortunately, I think 8 years ago, we're under the mistaken impression that the Sewage and Water Board was being well managed. They have they ran what we were told was the most powerful pumping system in the world. And
it is when it's working.
When it's working, but unfortunately in the past 12 years, it's been certainly damaged 12 years ago. It got better for 5 years or so, but in the past 6 or 7 has gradually become worse, where you had, a lot of pumps out in 2006 and 2007. You gradually got the system better in 2008 and 2009. In 2012, I think you had the best year of, only a few pumps were out of service, but gradually over the past 6 years, the system has fallen into disrepair. Now, whose fault is that? It's anybody's guess, but we should, follow the money. Where did the money go? Who runs the Sewage and Water Board? How are they chosen? Are they elected? Certainly not. They're chosen by our elected leaders.
And as David Hammer pointed out, there was money that the federal government gave us for certain projects that's still sitting in Washington. It hasn't been used yet.
Isn't that absurd?
And that's unconscionable.
It is. It is. It's just staggering that we're finding out that you have $100 million available to upgrade your turbine system. The Black & Veatch company, which is a multinational corporation, years ago they were based out of Kansas City, has investigated and sort of provided a report to the Sewerage and Water Board as to the condition of their system. The board is, made up of, political appointees, but the Black & Veatch comes in there and, goes through the numbers and checks out the pump stations, the sewer pump stations, the drainage pump stations, and issues a report. In 2004, in their report, at the end of the report, they said, oh, by the way, the turbines have to be rebuilt, the power system is too important to neglect, you've got to do something about this. And that was a year before our flood. And here we are, 12, 13 years later.
And to have something that is so important to us neglected for so long is unconscionable.
Absurd, absolutely
absurd. Something has to change. HJ, thank you for coming in. We appreciate that.
You bet.
Coming up tonight at 10, investigative reporter David Hammer will take a look at the contract and the amount of time it's taking to fix equipment like turbines at the Sewage and Water Board. Duke Carter will give us a little more insight on that special report coming up a bit later on the program this morning.